Hello everyone, and welcome back to World of Warships Blitz with Terry. Today we are looking at a new German Tier 10 premium battleship. So that got me excited, and I had to take a look immediately what that was all about. That was on Friday, and then sort of over the Friday night and on the weekend I have been scratching my head because I couldn't really make heads or tails of this thing at the beginning. But let's go through what I'm talking about. This is the Mecklenburg, named after the state in Germany, presumably. And this is a weird ship. So it's a German Tier 10 battleship. It's not, however, on a Großer Kurfürst hull. It looks more like a Friedrich der Große. Also, the guns are strange. If you look at these guns, these are quadruple guns. In return, the secondaries, which is what you normally go for on a German battleship, look suspiciously small. And there are torpedo tubes on the side. Okay, so not an awful lot to say about the history of these things because these are none of this existed. This is a result of the throw all possible attributes into a bag and then randomly draw a couple, throw them together, and call it a new ship method. This thing has a slightly diminished amount of ship skills for a German battleship. We only have a precise aim, but it's a precise aim too. Let's compare her. Let's do the logical comparison and compare her to the Große Kurfürst, which is the other German battleship, because the Schlieffen is a battle cruiser. The first thing that stands out is, well, like I just showed you, there's no sonar. And there's also no secondary overload. In fact, there aren't really many secondaries to begin with. We have the auto secondaries here, obviously, and we've got the Precise Aim 2 instead of the Precise Aim 1. Now, what is the difference between Precise Aim 1 and 2? Not as much as you might think. So the Precise Aim 1 actually gives you 25% increased accuracy for 20 seconds, and the Precise Aim 2 gives you 35%, which is significantly better than 25%, but still, it's not like twice that much or something, right? But still, it's a better precise aim. In return, we get no sonar, no secondary overload, nothing. And yeah, the hull looks suspiciously Tier 9. That's a Freddy hull. The maneuverability is, not great, as is normally typical for the hulls of this size. But the guns, this is where it gets interesting. So where the Großer Kurfürst has 8 457mm guns, the Mecklenburg has 16 guns in 4-quad turrets. But these are 305s. And in fact, these are pretty much the Odin's 305s. So this is the Mainz of battleships. Guns from 2 tiers lower, but a crap load of them in return. 20-second base reload, 14-kilometer range, which is pretty good, but the damage output obviously isn't magnificent, given that these are only 305s. And yeah, the 150s are suspiciously absent. There aren't any. Now she does get a decent amount of the 128mm auto secondaries, 12 twins, and these are the Großer Kurfürst auto secondaries. Same reload, same range, same everything, but there are no 150s on this ship. In return, she gets 2 quad launches of torpedoes, but these are not the Odin's torpedoes or the Schlieffen's torpedoes or any of those torpedoes. These are your standard cruiser torpedoes with 5.4 kilometer range. So kind of the Rhône's load out here. The AA is identical to the Großer Kurfürst. There's a little blurb in the description about the AA. It's just flavor text. There is nothing special about it. And the concealment is pretty much, for all intents and purposes, the same. It's a massive ship. So if we compare her to the Schlieffen, just briefly, because the Schlieffen is a battle cruiser, the Schlieffen has a noticeably better maneuverability than the Mecklenburg. And in terms of guns, obviously, the Schlieffen has the has the 420s that you find on the FTG, and he's got the very long range secondaries and everything. So range on the auto secondaries it's the same number of auto secondaries, but it's the larger caliber one. But it's a slower reload, and yeah, that's that. And obviously, if you compare the torpedoes on the Schlieffen, while they don't reload quite as quickly, have a workable range, whereas these are the Elbings sea mines, whereas the Mecklenburg just gets these super short range torpedoes. Now, what do we make of this then? And this is kind of where my problem started, right? It's not a brawler. Well, it is and it isn't. So first, it's a Friedrich der Große hull at tier 10, which is good. It's still better armored than a lot of other tier 10 battleships, but it's not a Friedrich der Große. It's not a Großer Kurfürst. It's a Friedrich der Große. So you also don't really have the damage output from the secondaries. Now you do have torpedoes, but you also don't have a sonar. This is a ship that struggles a little bit with its intended role, in my opinion. So the idea here is relatively clear. You strip away you strip away the close range DPS, you strip away the utility with the secondary overload and the sonar, and in return you give it a lot of guns with a better precise aim. This is meant to be a long range sniping battleship, and that's what people will probably tell you, that's what this is, and that it is very, very good at it. But there are some really, really big buts about this ship. So it is at long range only really good against battleships, because the dispersion is very good. It's a very precise ship. You can get a lot of these shells on target, but if you're firing at a fast maneuvering cruiser or a destroyer at 13 kilometers, you're never going to hit anything. The second thing, these are 305mm guns. You actually do need to do weak spot targeting at long range if you want to be effective. And while the dispersion is good, especially if you've got the precise aim up, it can be a bit hit and miss if you are trying to do weak spot targeting on battleships at extreme range, especially if you do it on a small screen. This is the other really, really, really big but. This ship requires, in order to really shine, the ship requires you to be capable of manual aim. Because these 305s are vicious, but they're only vicious if you manual aim. If you use the lock-on, and I'm gonna have to explain that in a second here, but if you use the lock-on, you will at range you will really, really struggle. So what is the deal with that? Well, Sly47 has actually made a really, really good video about it. I'll link it in the description if you want to check it out. So effectively, the idea is that if you're locked on, which is the default, then some people call it auto aim. It is to a degree. It'll help get your shells on target, but in doing so, will actually aim at sort of the center of mass of the ship, which means that your shells can land a little bit lower than they otherwise would, depending on dispersion and everything else. For ships that are not super precise, that is generally not a huge issue, because your shells are, you get a bit of a spread all around the target. Some of them land on deck, some of them hit the superstructure, some of them hit the belt armor. With a ship that is both extremely precise and has a very low caliber, and as such has a relatively low penetration, these 305s don't get through battleship belt armor at tier 10 at long range. They just don't. They mostly bounce off. So you have to not hit the belt armor. And the one way to make that happen is to disable the lock-on. How do you disable the lock-on? You are going to your settings, and you're going to your controls, and it's there. There's the auto lock. You see that? That's the one we're talking about. You can change between enable, which means it's always enabled, disable, which means it's always disabled, which you probably don't want, and with button, which gives you a button that you can use. I'll show you in the training room very briefly. So the upside of that is that you can have much finer control over where your shells are going to be landing on target. And like I said, for most ships, yes, it can boost it, but it's generally not a huge boost. For this ship, because of the very particular situation, it's actually sort of a must-have. So you see this button here? So now auto lock-on's on. I currently don't have a target ship around because I can't find the second device. I don't know where it went. Somebody kept it somewhere and I can't find it. Anyway, so now if let's pretend that island there is a target ship. So you would see the white bracket around and it would be locked on, which has the advantage that if the target ship is moving, you stayed locked on. So your guns keep tracking the target ship, right? If you disable that like this, then you have manual aim. So you're no longer tracking, which means you have to both manually track, manually aim, and obviously manually fire. So the advantage of that is that your shells are going where you want them to go. Why is that so important? Because of the combination of low caliber and high precision. This is a similar skill that you kind of need to have, I think, to play ships like the Puerto Rico or the Alaska or the Stalingrad successfully, because you can do, if you manage to hit the deck, so like everything on top really, if you manage to hit the deck reliably with these shells, the difference can be significant. You can do almost twice as much damage in a battle if you are hitting way more reliable with these shells. The downside of that whole thing is if you, like me, are playing on a, what am I playing at, 6-inch phone screen, if you disable the auto lock on or the auto aim or whatever you want to call it, you lose magnification in the zoom. And it's already super difficult on such a small screen to reliably hit things with that. And if the target moves in a different direction, then it gets even harder. So against other battleships with this thing, if you want to be successful, you almost required to disable the auto lock on and to manually aim, because it makes such a huge difference. Can the ship brawl? Yes, but here's the next but, and I'm sort of doing the conclusion before the whole thing, but you kind of have to know these things to see how I'm playing it and why I'm playing it the way I'm playing it. But can you brawl in the ship? Yes and no. It depends what. She's very, very good at brawling battleships. If you're disabling the auto aim, so you have to be capable of manually aiming these guns, and if you can play, say, in torpedo range, and if they're not necessarily supported. So you can't do the Großer Kurfürst thing where you just push into an enemy formation. Because one big problem that this ship has is destroyers. You have no sonar. You have no 150mm secondaries. This ship against destroyers is actually at a significant disadvantage, especially if they're not sailing broadside on to you out in the open in a straight line and the auto secondaries can't hit them. Because the auto secondaries are notoriously unreliable against destroyers. What you can do is use the 305s with armor piercing at mid-range, because the armor piercing does a decent amount of damage, whereas the high explosive obviously is meager. I mean, still it's 16 guns, but if you can get them all on target at a maneuvering destroyer at 8 kilometers, like I said, this is tier 10. People tend not to derp around as much. You do have the torpedoes, and the torpedo angles are extremely good for a battleship. So you kind of have that going for you for close range defense of destroyers. But playing against things with torpedoes in the ship's a pain. So while you want to brawl to really get your damage in, because these guns really shine at mid-range, when you can reliably hit deck with manual aim and the auto secondaries can go off, that's when the fun begins. The problem is to get into these situations because you're lacking the utility to do so. So it's an extremely situational ship that I personally find frustrating 75% of the time and exhilaratingly great 25% of the time. Because if she works, it's amazing. But if it doesn't, it's just teeth-grindingly annoying. Anyway, let's have a look at the setup. So because she doesn't really have any kind of secondaries, you can get the advanced turret for a better traverse speed, which is I would have considered if I would have gotten reload, and so the 3% reload and 7% traverse. But as it stands, it's a 6 degrees per second traverse. You're not in a cruiser, right? You're in a honking big brick of a ship. You don't need that, in my opinion. So we get the improved main armor belt, which, given that this is a Freddy hull, not a GK hull, is still doing something, but it's still doing something. She does take lots of damage from, especially again at mid to close ranges from the big guns at tier 10, which is a problem also that the Freddy has for the sort of pushing thing. Equipment. I am actually using the main battery mod 3. You could think reload maybe, and just get more shells down range. Probably a choice as well. I've actually just stuck with this one because it is really about allowing you to still do something in most situations where you cannot just brawl an enemy battleship at 6 kilometers, and you cannot just sail into the capture circle because there are 2 destroyers out there. And you can't see them, and you don't have sonar to tell you when the torpedoes are coming, and you will be royally screwed trying to dodge them without a sonar. The rest is just stock standard here, which brings us to the commander setup. I would actually use the torpedo alert here because it gives you a bit of an earlier, even if just a little bit of an earlier warning time. But still, this thing steers like a brick, and without the sonar, it's actually really difficult to avoid torpedoes in this thing. You do want the fire supremacy and the marksman skill because you can get 2 salvos off with the precise aiming. And the rest is relatively standard. I have actually tested both with APCS and without APCS. So even with APCS Plus from a legendary commander, with the lock-on, auto-lock-on or auto-aim on, it's making it doesn't make a difference. Even without stock standard APCS, if you manually aim, it makes all the difference. And I'm not joking. It makes the difference between a 60,000 and 120,000 points of damage game. That is how big the difference is with these guns. If you are manually aiming, it's a massive difference. That is against battleships, right? Against cruisers, you would more normally find with just using lock-on. But yeah. The historical camo, lastly, and I think we've skipped over that one, it gives you hit points, range, dispersion, and torpedo damage reduction, which again is meh, we don't need that one, but the other things are nice to have, especially on a ship that is completely focused on its main battery. Alright, so you can tell that I've tested the ship extensively because I really try to make sense of it. And alright, let's get into some games, and I'll show you, or I'll talk a bit more about what's going on. We're obviously top tier. We are playing base capture on the infamous fault line map against Midway, Yama, Colombo, another Yama, Lepanto, and Double Shima. We have obviously no cruisers, and we have a Malta on our side. This is Asian server because that's where my press account is. Fault line being an obvious problematic map in terms of being able to support your team. But what do you want? So the first thing you need to remember is that don't play this like a German ship. If you're trying to push like you're in a Freddy, it's not happening. So you kind of need to play a bit more carefully at the onset, but then also get yourself into close range engagements to really make the guns shine. That's sort of where the sweet spot lies, and that is a very situational thing. You also have to rely on your team to deal with destroyers, because that's something you're really, really bad at. All right then, let's see what gets spotted. The carrier is scouting west. Enemy carrier is coming down this way. AA is kind of like a tick box. There's a bit of it. You'll be shooting some planes down, but you're not an AA battleship, and especially that our other battleship is going west. I'm going to go and support these 2 Shimas there, and see what I can do at range, and maybe distract some enemy battleships trying to shoot at me. You might have noticed that I'm using the community contributor badge again, which means I am getting I'm significantly more focused than otherwise, but I want to try that again. The other thing that I like to mention is that the gun angles of the rear turrets are absolutely atrocious. You need to give almost full broadside to get them all on target. Okay, we have got a Yamato to shoot at, so I'm going to disable the lock-on and get the shots out. Now, a dispersion can be great and also can be a bit meh. I mean, we've got 7 out of 16 on target here with the precise aim on, so could have been better, could have been worse, but that Yama doesn't look at us. So keeping an eye on the right flank here, I can get a couple more shots. I think he is standing still, but you see how much less magnification I'm getting. And we get the second salvo still off. There's the Colombo shooting semi-armor piercing at me, probably expecting the destroyers. There comes some torpedoes from the Shima. Might have been predictive. I'm not sure if he's seen me. Let's get a salvo off at the Colombo. I am trying to go for the deck hits here, not for the bow and stern hits. But as you can also see, you need to manually compensate for, and that's much better. 12 out of 16 on. You need to manually compensate for moving targets, or for you moving or the target moving. Okay, there's Shimakaze, never going to hit that, but there's also Yamato, who is currently engaged with the friendly Shimas. So let's see if we can distract him. Hello, Yama. Fully broadsiding Yama, 12 shots on target, but as you can see, I've been aiming just a little bit too low, and most of them have bounced off, and that was a 5,000 points of damage salvo, which is disappointing for Battleship caliber. So we're opening the distance, not because I'm afraid of Yama too much, but because I'm afraid of Shima torps, and because I have no sonar. So another precise aim up, you've got plenty of them, and shots out at the Yama. We need to turn the ship around, because the Yama is actually reversing. And a couple more hits on target. Wasn't great either. Like I said, these guns really shine at mid-range, but if there are double Shima out there, I am very much not risking that. Fortunately, the friendly Shimas are doing a great job, so that's one enemy Shima down, and I'm not sure where the other one went. We do have some possible supporting shots at the enemy Colombo there. And I am considering, I mean, given that our Shima's over here and that's a Yamato, they can deal with the Yamato pretty easily by themselves if they're not coming under carrier attack, and the carrier seems to be busy on the other flank. So I might be needed in the middle, but I'm going to try and do a bit more to distract that Yamato over there. Hello, Mr. Yamato. Look, there's a battleship for you to shoot at. No, he's still engaging the Shimas. Okay, there come the torpedoes, and I think that Yamato is probably doomed. So if there's double Shima, he's not gonna have an awful lot of fun. So let's actually, yep, there he goes. Let's go around. Yeah, the other Shima is actually, the enemy Shima is actually coming in. We do need to support back on our cap circle, and this is where, you know, everybody's most hated map comes in. Because it's going to take me a while to get back there. Fortunately, this is a pretty fast ship, and there was a Cristoforo Colombo somewhere in the middle. So I'm going to go through the middle and see if the Shimas need support in distracting the Colombo, because Colombo is very dangerous for the friendly Shimas, especially if they're air spotted. But the carrier doesn't seem to be able to make up his mind if he wants to hit the Shimas or if he wants to support the push against our cap. So I'm gonna go through here. There is a battleship. I'm not sure if that's the CC. If it is, the Shimas might be in trouble. I'm still, no, it's another Yamato. Okay, so where did that Colombo go? Oh, there he is. Okay, so he's actually rushing the cap. Okay, so we're gonna need to do something about that thing. Friendly carrier is, to his great credit, moving already. There's one battleship that is kind of trying to defend the capture circle, but against Colombo and carrier attack and whatever else is coming down there. The enemy Shimas have been neutralized, which is great, so the friendly Shimas can run rampage in the enemy cap circle pretty much, unless the carrier decides that he really wants to do something about it, but he seems to be more focused on trying to go for the cap. Okay, we have killed the Lepanto, but that's a full health Colombo. That was aimed a little bit high. You see how difficult it can be to do manual aim at long range if you're on a really small screen. So that Colombo is now capping, so we do need to do something about it. And that's our friendly Yamato dead, but the carrier is already gone. So now we just need to, we're ahead on points, and if the Shimas can make something happen, I can deal with Colombo. I'm on full health, so Colombo is not a problem for me, especially not if I have carrier support. But You see again, like I want to rush the cap, but I have to actually turn slightly left in order to get all the guns on target because of the terrifyingly bad angles. But there you see what can happen if you get into a range. Okay, we've lost one of the Shimas, so we're even on points. If you can get into closer ranges, so like around 8 kilometers, and Colombo for some reason, yeah, semi-armor piercing isn't going to cut it, buddy. Once you get into these ranges, then things get really fun. So that Colombo is in trouble, and I would love to close the range more, but I want also to get the guns on target. He smokes up, obviously, again, which isn't going to help him, because I can see where you are, and it's just going to be delaying the inevitable. You're still shooting semi-armor piercing. Somebody needs to revisit how to Colombo. But yeah, you see at these ranges, you are absolutely massacring things, and that's where she shines. The problem is you don't often get these kind of ranges, especially if there are enemy destroyers out there. But if you can, and if I didn't do the loop around the right flank, but I had a stayed center, I could have probably easily done 120, 130,000 damage in this engagement without too much problems. Just by, like, once the enemy Shima was dealt with, just by brawling the battleships. So let's go for a second one. In this game, we're playing against 4v4. Haku, Schlieffen, Freddy, and Yugumo. Off we go. We do have a Worcester of ourselves here, which is always good for AA support. 3 bots, so most of the destroyers are not super problematic for us. We can probably safely ignore these. The auto secondaries are great, just not against destroyers, but against bigger targets. They're obviously the same that you get on the Große first, just that you, I think, get 2 more. So two twins more. All right. So I'm spawning with Worcester, which is good for air cover. So off we go into decap. Carrier goes the other direction, and in a game like this, there's 1 destroyer here, and that's the only one I kind of need to worry about. But I do have a Worcester here who can lend me a sonar if necessary, so that's a good thing. If you spawn in games with lots of destroyers, it can be really, really frustrating, because in a traditional German battleship, you can still make something happen, because you do have the capability of compensating for the lack of maneuverability with actually having a sonar. But in this thing, you're at the mercy, and I have run into so many Shima torpedoes. It's just not funny. Combine that with the necessity to, and yeah, against cruisers you do want to use the lock-on. Combine that with the necessity to play at mid-range to be successful, and you really need the stars to sort of align for you to make things happen. And there's a Schlieffen. So now, Schlieffen is a battle cruiser. Against Schlieffen, we don't want to use auto-aim. Schlieffen also has weaker armor than us. And I don't see the destroyer anywhere. So we're going to go for the Schlieffen now. Schlieffen does have torpedoes. And look at that dispersion if it goes right. Yeah, that was kind of nice. Schlieffen does have torpedoes. So we need to kind of anticipate where they're coming. So he is not shooting at me. But I am thinking that torpedoes might be in the water. Because he is kind of changing course and speed there. So it's tier 10. People do have situational awareness at times. And I think he's now coming towards me. So let's get the second salvo off. Yeah, there we go. And that's really, really leaving a mark. Okay, Worcester is coming in. So it's probably time to go ahead again. And hopefully Worcester has a sonar running. I don't think I can. Yeah, he's shooting at me now. I don't think I can get the salvo off before he goes behind the island. But obviously Worcester is paying attention and is not running into me. Thank you. That's very nice. I am going to take the fire, obviously. But there should be Schlieffen torpedoes somewhere in the water. There they come. So Worcester did not have to have the sonar running, which is, or maybe he did and he saw the torpedoes earlier than me, which is unusual. But anyway, Yeah, that Schlieffen is in deep trouble. So we're just going to ignore. Yeah, the auto secondaries can deal with the Baltimore there, and that Schlieffen is dead. So there might be torpedoes from the other side coming in, so you don't want to sail in a straight line. But I can give chase at this point against the enemy Schlieffen, and you know that thing is not going to have a good time against me. So. Yep, there they come. You can see them already. There they go, yep. But you see how much time you have to react to torpedoes. You don't have time to react to torpedoes. That's just the short and narrow of it. And that means if there are destroyers out there, it is extremely hard to get yourself into those sort of positions where you can make something, where you can have a good impact on the battle, unless you want to long range fire support. I'm coming on obviously under carrier attack. I'm trying to dodge some of these, but obviously the torpedoes pass harmlessly by, only to then hit my rudder once they pass by. Thanks, Wargaming. And I think Sly calls them magnetic torpedoes. I like that. Magnetic detonators, yeah. So is this a ship? While we're hunting down the carrier, Worcester can take care of the destroyer. So is this a ship that I would recommend? Yes, but. There are some huge buts. If you are someone who likes playing supercruisers, like Stalingrad, the Puerto Rico, Alaska, and you're comfortable with manual aiming, yes. If you're someone who's playing on a large device, like on a tablet-sized screen, yes. If you are someone who likes German battleships and likes to play German battleships as they're intended to do, maybe, but you do need to have the other sort of skills at least kind of tackled, because otherwise you're going to be really frustrated with this thing. If you're just a regular battleship player who wants to sit at long range and lock onto targets and fire their guns, probably not the best ship for that purpose. There are much better ships out there that can actually really hurt, that are very precise, that can hurt ships at long range, and this is a very special ship, and given the right circumstances can do monstrous amounts of damage. But it does need the right circumstances. It does need to have a clear brawl against an enemy battleship. This is a battleship brawler. I mean, cruisers, if you can get them in close range, obviously, but mostly you can't. But this is a battleship brawler, and it's very good at that with manual aim. So provided you're not having the risk of enemy destroyers lurking, and you're not coming under concentrated air attack, and you manage to get an enemy battleship that agrees to fight you at that range, and that enemy battleship is not a großer Kurfürst, then you can do an amazing amount of damage. It's not a bad ship, so don't get me wrong, right? It's not a bad ship, but don't expect to just pick that up and have success with it. You really need to, like I said, have these sort of things ready to go, sort of skills ready to go to make this work. And yeah, so given that it's a tier 10 premium, it's probably going to be really expensive. So here's my recommendation if you're interested and want to spend the money on it. And that's it from me today. Thanks everybody, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.